Hi YouTube, welcome to another quick software demo. Today I'm going to show you a super fast way to retopologize models in Zbrush using a tool that's built into Zbrush called Zremesher. I'm going to retopo this model that you see on the screen, and I'm going to show you just how crazy fast it is. Basically, I just wanted to try Zremesher because I had heard of it. I heard everybody say it was super powerful, and it was so effective that it was enough for me to buy Zbrush. So let me just show you here how quick it is and how easy it is. So this is the model I'm going to retopo. I'm in Blender right now. I'll show you the mesh. The mesh is clean in that it doesn't have holes, it doesn't have duplicate vertices or anything like that. But you can see the level of topology is very inconsistent. And obviously there's no edge flow to this, so you would not be able to animate or basically use this model very well at all, just because there's too many vertices. So normally to retopologize this, you would use a manual method, and you would kind of trace over the top of this surface manually with planes, and that can be a really nice way to get the exact result you want. But that takes hours and hours. So instead of that, let's just send this over to ZBrush. So I'm going to select my little horse head object here. I'm going to export it, and I'll just use a .obj, and we'll just call it horsehead.obj, and I'll check this box to include the selection only, and really none of the other settings need to be dealt with here. So I'll export that, and then I'm going to open ZBrush. And while it loads up, I'll just tell you I'm not very good at using ZBrush itself. The UI is completely different from Blender, and even how you navigate in the viewport is different. So I'm no expert in this software at all, which maybe even helps my point to just how easy this Zremesher is to use. So once I open the software, all I'm going to do is open one of these default projects. So I'll open up this little sphere, and then the only setting that I need to make sure I have on, it's actually under transform. So I'm going to go under transform and make sure I have this activate symmetry button checked on, and then I'll go in the X direction, and I can just click out of there. And then I'm going to import my mesh. So I'm just going to come over to this right side here. I'm going to click import, and I'm going to select the object file that I sent from Blender. And now you can see we have the exact same mesh in ZBrush here. Here's what the mesh looks like, same as we saw in Blender. It's messy, it just doesn't have any technical problems with it yet. You come over here to this geometry button, and then underneath that there is the Zremesher tool. And there's a bunch of settings in here, and a lot of them I haven't even gone through. The ones that I've used just as a rule so far is to keep creases. I'll check that on. And then there's a lot of other ones. I haven't even used them yet. And then the only other one you have to really know for sure is that this slider up here tells you it's kind of a relative amount of topology. So the higher this is, the more topology you'll get, and the smaller obviously will reduce topology. So I'm going to just show you, we're going to max it out at 100 here, and then all I have to do is click this Zremesher button, and you can see at the top of the screen it'll give you kind of a progress bar for how long the software runs, and then here in just a few seconds it has popped up with our result. And you can see that without any other settings, without any other tweaking, this already looks pretty good. So obviously now we still have a lot of points. We were at about 400,000 vertices before, and right now we're at 183,000. So basically it cleaned it up, but it didn't reduce the total poly count by a whole lot. But you can see just how consistent it is. The topology more or less follows the shape of the object. So if I want to try a little bit lower detail level, I can just hit Control Z to undo that. And then let's just set this down to, let's just set it to around 20 and then try again. And this should take way less time. So the other concern here with these outputs is that while they look nice and clean, especially in flat areas, you can see where there's loops. Some of the loops don't follow the topology perfectly. A good example here is on the front of the nose, where you can see that the loops kind of, they transition from inside the nose to outside the nose. So they don't stay aligned very well to the actual topology. So on the front here, it looks like it's doing what it should, but on the inside, it's kind of this spiral effect, and that will make your renders look a little weird. They can kind of show that just how it is here, how these reflections look a little strange in the viewport. And then also it's harder to pose that. So for areas like this that won't move very much, that might be okay. And let me turn off the topology here. So this isn't shading it smooth, so it would look even a little bit better if we change that setting, but we'll do all that in Blender anyway. So if I want to control how this topology flows around certain areas, I'm going to undo this, and then I can come up here to this brush button up at the top. If I click that, it'll open this entire panel of all these built-in brushes that ZBrush comes with. And I'm going to go to the very last one that's called Zremesher Guide. I click on that, and then I'm going to set this this view to more of a front view. Okay. So now, because I enabled symmetry, when I draw on this, it'll be the same on both sides. That's what we want. So basically what this allows me to do, this is a brush in ZBrush itself. I'll change the size of this tool a little bit. So what this will allow me to do is to tell ZBrush what parts of the topology are important to maintain the edge flow on. So we'll just use the nose for an example. So what these guides are going to do is they're going to say, okay, you need to make planes that go between these lines. And it just can help control the way that the retopology works. So it's going to try to make planes that are evenly spaced in between the lines instead of just kind of guessing on its own. And I'm sure there are plenty of other settings that help with this sort of theory, but basically, if you already know how to retopologize, this will kind of feel familiar with manual methods. But let's just define a few of these to try to control this a little bit better. Okay, and then I'll zoom back out a little bit. Okay, and then with those lines on there, all we have to do is click the Zremesher button one more time. So I'll do that. And again, a couple seconds to process. Okay. And so now we can see how it changed the result. So before we had a little bit of this twisting, and now it looks like we have even quite a bit more. So at this point, I would have to come in and change how I had these lines defined up in the top here. But you can see that in the bottom, down here, where we had some of the twisting before, that's more or less taken care of now. So it can take some tweaking. Let's hit undo and see what we did. So basically what happened is there's too much length between these two lines, and it wasn't able to figure out how to connect those. So I'm going to try one more time. We'll go really general. And let's just do this. And let's just see if it can figure that out. Maybe we'll put one on the inside here. Okay, let's give that a try. Okay, that actually looks significantly better. So there's a couple spots where you have a little bit of goofiness, but I mean, for drawing two lines on here, to have this outside edge of the nose here fixed this nicely is pretty fantastic. So you can do that on the entire mesh. You know, other areas you'd probably want to do it is like eyelids, although these ones look like they did pretty well. And anywhere there's extreme geometry. So for now, we'll say that this is good enough. This is much lower poly count. We're now at 41,422. So we're about 10% of what we started with, which is great. And the flow of this topology is pretty much incredible for the couple of minutes we've spent messing with it. So now all I have to do is export this back into Blender, and then I can use it as if I had made it there. So all I got to do is go up here and click export. And I'm just going to call this, we'll just call it head from ZBrush, so I know which one it is. We'll save it. Okay, and then we can close ZBrush. And we'll go right back into Blender. So I'm going to hide this existing one just to get it out of the way. I'm going to go to File, Import, Wavefront or OBJ, and then I'm going to select the file we just exported from ZBrush, hit Import, and here you can see it in Blender. So let's right-click and shade it smooth. Okay, now let's pull up the original, and I'll move it over to the side. So the one on the left is the high topo original mesh, and the one on the right is the new one. So if I zoom in here really close, especially in areas like the nose, you can see that there is not a lot of difference visually. So you may lose a little bit of finer details on some of the sculpting that, like by the eyelid here, where it's a little bit too fine for the Retopo tool to pick up. And then let's look at the topology comparison here. So you can see just how much better the new one on the right is versus this old one. And if you had to make some modifications to this model going forward, it's really, really easy now. And the sculpting tools in Blender will help you smooth out some of the hard edges. But this can serve as a final mesh. It can serve as a really good base to start to apply normal maps, and even I've used it for sculpting characters to add multi-res modifiers from a really clean starting point. So it's super, super convenient. This entire video is barely 10 minutes long, maybe 12 minutes long, and I didn't spend hours. I mean, this would have taken me a couple hours to retopologize normally, and you have to either have an add-on for it, or you have to really be good with Blender's editing and modifiers to know how to do that properly. So to get from this to this in under 15 minutes is just wild. I'll have more on this later. This was just kind of a quick demo. And like I said at the beginning, to me, this was enough of a time saving to buy ZBrush, which is definitely not cheap. But I've spent upwards of 20 hours on a single character just for retopology before. So to me, this makes a lot of sense. So get in the comments, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.